course it's DBJ. Who else would it be? I'm going to talk about Sandbox Tools and top 3 things for Sandbox that I have. Creating a really good sandbox. And first let me describe what a sandbox is for those who don't know, as opposed to the railroad. In role-playing games, a sandbox is a game world or game setting where the players have free reign and typically thought of as a place where the players can make any decision they want to, travel anywhere they want to, go anywhere, and create the story based on their own personal motivations, as opposed to having as opposed to being on the rails. And a railroad is essentially a game that follows one specific line. So an example would be a story of revenge. So the players are attacked, and now they must kill the big bad. And so therefore, it runs very linearly. Go after the minions, go after the bad guy's bodyguard, kill the bodyguard, kill the big baddie. 1, 2, 3. A sandbox, on the other hand, is a place where the game master has to create an environment so that the players, despite anything that they decide to do, the game master is ready to interpret and react to all the things that they do. So I'm going to give you 3 tools and end this with something very important. And the 3 tools I have are friction, pressure, and impact. All right. So pressure. Let's start with that. To create a really good sandbox, you need pressure. And what I mean by pressure is that if the players stand still in your sandbox, and I'm just going to create something. Let's say you create a sandbox where it's the epitome of 4 elements. So if the players travel in any four directions, they're going to interact with the epitome of earth, air, fire, or water. All right? Well, if the players stay in the middle, and usually you have some place, maybe some mega city or some area of oasis or something of that nature. If there's no pressure, there's no motivation for the players to move. Okay? There's nothing moving them. There's nothing forcing them to go in any particular direction. They say, well, if the safest place is this big giant mega city, I think I'll just live out my life right here. I've got a high level character and I have no danger to fight off, and I'm pretty happy in my wizard's tower. The fighter's pretty happy being a guard or creating his own army. It's not a big deal. Let's not do anything. All right, so one way to create pressure is that if the players stay still, the world keeps moving. All right. So for using the elemental example, let's say there is a very unstable balance between the 4 elements. It starts to snow, it gets hot, it starts to rain, there are earthquakes, and then over time, those pressure elements start building up, and as the players resist reacting, they will be affected by those pressure systems. It could be politics, it could be economic, it could be an impending war. So an example of the elemental thing, the wizard wants to build a wizard tower, and an earthquake knocks it down. It's half built and an earthquake knocks it down. And then the wizard's like, well, I'll build another one. And the earthquakes get worse. And then there are no people to help work on it because they're afraid of the earthquakes. And then over time, earth elementals start coming into this big giant city. And then because the earth elementals are coming, the place starts to flood, and so on and so forth. And the players are caught in the middle. And then in that case, then the players start going like, well, what the hell? I want to be left alone. You know, I'm going to go after the earth elementals. And then you find out that there's one of the earth djinn, I can't remember the name of them, you know, is the one that's causing all this. And so now you have this pressure build up. Let's go with politics. Pressure from politics. Player character maybe wants to build a wizard's tower. And one country feels that the country that the player character is building a wizard's tower, it's like building weapons of mass destruction. We don't want you building a wizard's tower. That's akin to a sign of war. And the player character's like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. But the enemy nation feels that, hey, if you can build one, we're going to build one too. And we're going to send emissaries to have your tower taken down. We may send assassins because we think that you're, creating experiments hidden behind your wizard's tower that are going to come after us. And it could be a complete, the wizard's like, player characters like, I don't have any interest in doing that. But perception creates that. And maybe politically, your friendly nation is like, sorry, dude, we're going to have to take your tower down and kick you out because, you're a disruptive influence. All right. So pressure, it's having the world move even if the player stands still. So then we're going to come to friction. And friction is the second part of that pressure, where NPCs, creatures, political entities, economic entities actively are going after, hunting, oppressing, hindering the player characters on purpose. It is the player characters become a target for good or bad against whether it's another nation, other creatures, or motivations or something. For example, the Council of Wizards says the player character that is the wizard, you must join our council or else. And the player character goes, well, I don't have any interest in joining you guys. I don't even like you guys. And all I want to do is sit at home and study my own spell books. And the council says, well, you're not joining us. You must be our enemy. Now you're creating some friction there. You're creating this animosity. And what you do is, if the players refuse to get involved, you stack on the animosity. Wait a minute, the wizard doesn't want to join the council? Maybe he'll join our war band. So then the warriors come up and say, well, maybe you'll join us against the wizard's council, because the wizard's council is oppressing our people. And then the war band's like, join us. And PC Wizard goes, well, I don't want to join you guys. And they're like, well, why not? You're against them. You can't stay out of this war. You can't stay out of this. Something has to be done. So the war council says, well, we have to attack that wizard because he's on his own. If we don't, he's going to join the council and they'll just get more powerful, etc., etc. You're creating this friction. You're creating this thing where there are enemies after the player characters for good or bad, and as the players try to dodge the situation, it just gets worse. And lastly, it's impact. We GMs and world builders like to create worlds, and we think oftentimes in static ways. We want our world to be a specific type of world. So, for example, I create a world where the four elements are at the four corners of the world and they are competing against each other. But a player character joins in. Player character is a wizard and he's a necromancer. And thinking in static terms, maybe I don't want necromantic magic taking over, but the player character inserts this extra X element. And that's where, as world builders, we have to let that sandbox grow on its own. So we have to let it change. So maybe the wizard says, hey, I want to study some necromantic magic, and it becomes the fifth obstacle in a 4-point world. Impact. It is allowing the players to have an impact on the world. For good or bad, through action or inaction, it has an impact on the world. If the wizard starts throwing around a lot of cash, it affects the economy. If the wizard wants to fight off the elemental beings, the wizard has an impact. Maybe the wizard begins getting allies it didn't ask for, or creating enemies it didn't ask for. Maybe if the PCs are powerful enough, and I'm thinking probably 3rd level or higher, for me, they start having impact on the world. Their opinions matter. Their actions matter. People start changing the things that they believe in. They start there becomes hero worship and like paparazzi and people following their lead, and for good or bad, commoners start gathering together as a militia, even though the fighter of the group, the fighter PC, is like, you guys cannot fight off this horde of orcs. Let us do it. And they're like, no, you're a brave warrior. We want to be brave warriors too. And you're going like, dude, you're 0 level. You got 2 hit points. Get the hell out of here. But it can happen. It can also be the opposite, where enemy nations start looking at the player characters like, whoa, that wizard's powerful. That fighter is slaughtering our people. We need to combat that situation. We need to build siege machines. We need to get the Wizards Council to build us an army of golems, and so on and so forth. And you start building these things, and the players have a great impact in your sandbox. So those are my 3. But although I talked about the PCs not acting, the most important element in a sandbox are your PCs. And they need to be, more than anything, to have a great sandbox, they need to be self-motivated. And they need to be self-motivated as a group. Because it's easy to drop a bunch of PCs into a world, and all of them, the first thing they do, you crest the hill and you enter into the city. And the first thing they do is they all go to the 4 corners. I'm going to go gambling. I'm going to go to the Wizard's Tower. I'm going to be a fighter. I'm going to get another magic sword commissioned. And, the last one's like, well, I'm a halfling. I don't have anything to do with that. I'm going to go back to my home, and I'm going to go back to Hobbiton. And you're game master, you're sitting there like, oh, fuck. The minute I threw them in my world, they split up. So the most important thing in a sandbox are players that are on the same page. All the player characters are like, hey, we've come home to a strange and new world, and we want to protect our own. The player characters come home and they say, hey, the wizards, we're going to join the wizard as he builds its tower. I'll be the fighter and I'll protect it, and I'll be the rogue, and I will sneak around getting supplies for the wizard. We're all going to stick together. We all are on the same page, and we are going to have a great impact in this world on the same page. And when the Wizards Council is working against the wizard, all the other player characters are going, hey, dude, you need some help? Man, this isn't right for them doing these things against you. We're going to join you in your efforts. And that's just picking one player character where everyone else joins together. Maybe they all are thinking, you know what? If we don't do something, things are going to happen. So we all need to work together on the same thing, whether it's we need to work together to go into the dungeon crawl, or we need to travel to the 4 corners of the elemental of this great elemental plane and convince the Jinn and the Ifrit of the world not to attack our home. Things like that. So the most important thing in the sandbox are the players. That's all I got to say. And in a sandbox, you have to be creative. You have to let that creative energy fly. And the worst thing you want is for the player characters to destroy everything you've created. That's, I have a video, mofos nuked my dungeon crawl, and that's pretty much what a lot of players have done in the past. And as a player, you don't want to be that guy. Don't be that person that's just like, hey, I'm going to set fire to the whole town before you even stepped foot in it, after the game master created this rich and enticing world for you to be in. It's easy to be destructive. It's easy. That's where graffiti and that's where the actions in Ferguson happen. It's easy to be to be Curious George on Red Bull and just destroy everything. It's easy for that. It's very hard to be creative. But when you see the fruits of your labor from creating something, it's a wonderful thing. It's much harder, takes a little bit longer, but it's a beautiful thing, guys. So thanks for your attention. And again, pressure, friction, impact, use that in your game. Create a sandbox. Don't be afraid to do it. Put it out there. I'd love to see it. Thanks, guys.